it's quite a scary time. And I thought that let me go out there, get guys that know what they're talking about, and let's try and give you the information that you need in order for you to make the decisions that you need to do within the coming days, so that you can, get your business to survive through this difficult time. So just 1 second for me. So what are we going to talk about today? So there's a term that came up today, and you're going to start reading about this a lot more in the news coming up, and it's called force majeure. It's quite a foreign term. And at like an hour ago, I actually spoke to Josh. Josh is someone that's going to be joining us today as well for a while. He's going to explain the term for us. It's something which is extremely foreign. I can't even properly announce that. So yeah. Then we're going to talk about essential services and permits. What does it entail? There's some challenges in terms of that section that we can maybe give you some help on. Then we've got Marty. Marty is going to explain to us exactly how the UIF TERS scheme works. When we started this lockdown, there was a lot of other various UIF initiatives out there. It seems that they've now stopped all of them, and they're going to be focusing a lot more on this TERS. She's going to explain that a bit more for us. We've not heard a lot about the workman's compensation stuff. The workman's compensation stuff, I think it becomes important when people become sick and there's certain conditions, but Marty will explain that to us in a lot better terms. Then I'm going to talk about the SARS stuff. I think I've got the easiest bit of everyone. One thing that we know about the revenue services, their systems are geared towards online workings and stuff like that. We see challenges in terms of the UIF guys, as well as the small business development guys. But luckily, we've got the private sector guys available to also assist in this difficult time. So guys, all the information that we're sharing with you is up to like Friday, when we updated these slides. We see as government figures out things, they do change their procedures and so forth on a regular basis. But what we're going to do for you, we've got this presentation, we've got most of your contact details, and we're going to update you as and when the information gets updated, and we'll try and do that as regularly as possible. So let's just jump into this presentation. So our presenters today is myself, Willie from Value Smart Business Solutions. Then we've got Josh. Josh, I literally contacted him like, was it an hour and a half ago when Daniel introduced him to me. Then we've got Marty, and then we've also got Daniel. So let's start this presentation. So who am I? My name is Willie van Dijk. I've been a qualified accountant for 15 years. I'm also the founder of Value Smart Business Solutions, and we primarily focus on compliance as well as virtual CFO services. Josh, over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for having me, Willie. Happy to help you guys on such short notice.
Thank you very much.
Before I commence, just to give you guys a little indication of what we do. We are a law firm based in Rosebank, offering services for commercial, corporate, civil litigation. We do divorce work, we do criminal law, sort of all across the board. You can contact us on our website at www.swvginc.co.za, and we're happy to assist any of you guys with any sort of questions, any clarity you wish to get from what's going on at the moment. And just for this afternoon's purposes, I've been requested by Willie to assist in basically informing everyone what force majeure is all about. It seems to have become quite relevant in this uncertain time, and we'll kick off with that. Obviously, guys, if you have any questions that I can't answer and the like, you're more than welcome to contact me. You'll note our Website details are at the bottom of the page. And of course, if there's anything further you'd like to ask any questions on, you more than welcome to email us at lawyers@swvginc.co.za. All right, so what exactly is force majeure? To translate it into English, it basically means superior force, and it's a legal mechanism that is usually contained in commercial contracts between contracting parties that deals with circumstances beyond people's control and what will occur as a result of this event taking place. Now, usually a force majeure clause is contained in an agreement between two contracting parties, and it's intended to protect a business entity or individual from what's known as an act of God. What is an act of God? In the normal sense, it's wars, riots, floods, hurricanes, and in certain circumstances also include pandemics such as the COVID-19 virus. In terms of what are the requirements to be successful in having a claim of force majeure, it's important to note that some of the requirements are that the event that's taken place wasn't in the company or in the individual's control. Another requirement is that the event that's taken place couldn't have reasonably been foreseen or overcome. It's also very important to note that another requirement is that the event is not a result of anyone's negligence or willful conduct. And there must be a link between the event and the failure to perform something. So a very classic example is where you have a supply agreement with a customer, you producing a product of whatever sort, and as a result of COVID-19, your factory's been forced to close. As a result of the closure of your factory, you can't manufacture and produce this product, and by being closed, you can't deliver this product to your customer. As a result of that, you are essentially in breach of the agreement with your client by not being able to perform. And in most supply agreements, there'll be a clause contained, which is known as force majeure, which says that a contract is suspended whilst this event is taking place. So you are unable to perform by virtue of the fact that this event has taken place, and the contract will be suspended so long as the event is in place. So you are precluded from performing whilst this force majeure is currently happening. So there's been a lot of uncertainty at the moment with when is it applicable, when isn't it applicable. There's been some debate whether this COVID-19 pandemic is applicable. In my opinion, and from the research I've done, in light of what the government has done by restricting the movement and essentially only ensuring that essential services remain open, I would be of the opinion that this is a civil authority commissioned by the government and would therefore render force majeure to be applicable in circumstances where it's relevant. We've had a lot of inquiries from clients of ours, and I'll give you guys a good example, which I think is important to discuss. We had a request from a client of ours. A customer got a hold of them and said, look, we don't have the cash flow to pay you guys. Our businesses are closed, and we're invoking the force majeure clause. Now, in circumstances where you've already performed, circumstances where you've already delivered a product or a service, the customer or the debtor who owes you the money can't use this event from not wanting to pay you. Again, performance has already taken place. So it's only applicable in circumstances where your performance is impossible by virtue of the event taking place. So because the government have restricted us from convening businesses, and obviously these are for people that fall out of the essential services sector, we cannot physically perform. So in circumstances where you can't physically perform, a force majeure clause in your agreement will regulate what takes place. In circumstances where there is no force majeure clause in your agreement, there is a common law position that comes into effect, which essentially deals with whether or not the event amounts to a force majeure and what your remedies are in respect thereof. It's also very important for everyone to know that there is a duty on parties to ensure that you mitigate the risk of a force majeure taking place. So an example would be certain of my clients' businesses, certain parts of my client's business do fall under essential services. You are able to perform, you must perform. It can't be used as a blanket to simply not perform as it is. So there's a duty on parties to mitigate the risk of the exposure. A lot of people have asked me, and a lot of queries have come through as what do tenants do in commercial and residential lease agreements. So we've looked into this, and we've come across that a lot of lease agreements, whether it be commercial or residential, don't have a clause that deals with force majeure. And it's really dependent on what the agreement says amongst the tenant and the landlord. But our first glance opinion is that it wouldn't necessarily be dependent on the event happening, whether or not you pay your rent. So whilst people might not be in occupation, their landlords still may put them in default by failing to pay the rent. So our advice on this is to ensure that your communication with your landlord is up to date. What we suggest is that you get into some type of agreement with your landlord, that if you guys aren't going to have the cash flow to ensure that your rent is timelessly paid, that you enter into an agreement where the payment terms are potentially relaxed, or that towards the end of your lease agreement, you can agree that for the month or two that you weren't in occupation, you could pay that at the end, or the rent paid off over X amount of months, and the like. It's very important to know that any performance of an obligation will not be objectively impossible if that performance has become more onerous. So where people are strapped with cash flow and they have to pay their creditors, they can't say, well, there's a force majeure, I'm not paying you. If performance has taken place, the obligation to perform on the other contracting party side is then still relevant. So I think we've got to make sure, and it's very important to know that force majeure is only really applicable where you are precluded from performing your obligations in terms of the contract. So I've been privy to a lot of notices that businesses are sending out and saying, well, there's a force majeure event, we can't pay you, please just hang tight with us and we'll come back to you when we can. If performance has taken place, force majeure won't apply. It's only, like, again, and I keep reiterating this because it's very easily confused, and I think a lot of people have taken the advantage of confusing it. Where someone has delivered and performance becomes due and payable, a force majeure won't interrupt that. And again, I think it's very important to look at the agreements that regulate who does this protect. It often protects the person who has to perform. So in circumstances where there's a supply agreement, the person producing or supplying the product will be protected by force majeure, where they are precluded from being able to supply the product. Otherwise, we're also getting a lot of inquiries as to insurance policies, whether or not insurance policies cover an event like this. This will also just fall under something known as business interruption. However, from the investigations that we've done, it's important that the policy covers an infectious disease. A lot of business interruption policies only deal with physical loss, i.e. a flood that destroys a property, etc. So from what we've seen at the moment, it's very specific and akin to what a pandemic is, or the fact that an infectious disease can have in your business. Otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it. Everyone, like I said, is more than welcome to email me any questions that they have. We've got a team of lawyers that are assisting with queries at this stage. Our email address is lawyers, LAWERS, at swvginc.co.za. We're more than happy to assist you with any queries that you may have. At the moment, we're reviewing all our clients' agreements to see whether or not force majeure is applicable in their circumstances. And we're also looking at amending credit applications and the like to include force majeure clauses for clients that don't have it. But what we implore and what we suggest with everyone is make contact with the other contracting party. You know, we're obviously all going through this together, so reasonableness must prevail. And so long as there's contact between one another, we're hoping that you are able to resolve these issues between one another and not, you know, have to resort to litigation. Naturally, if you resort to litigation, that's why we're around. But the point is to try to be reasonable and to just keep in touch. We had a scenario last week where a client of ours isn't able to deliver and the other contracting party sent a cancellation notice. So we're now involved in a dispute as to whether or not force majeure is applicable. So yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. If anyone has any questions, they're more than welcome to go ahead and ask. I've got a couple of more minutes on my side.
What I think, Joss, at the end of this, the webinar, I'm going to make a link available to everyone. And then if they need help with the force majeure stuff, then what we'll do is we'll get them in contact with you so that you guys can answer their questions. Yeah, so thank you very much, Joss. You came to this webinar in the very last minutes. Thank you for assisting us in this.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. So you need to run, everybody. Let's just thank Josh. And then I think we'll move on. We'll go to Marty. Marty, if you can maybe introduce yourself, and then if Daniel, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll jump into the detail of the rest of this webinar. Marty, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Willie, and thank you for the participants for allowing us to speak to you guys today. I think what is important, and I've said to my clients as well, they must just remember that there's no template for a disaster like this in our country, and more specifically not in labor law. So it is important to note that the Department of Labor will issue directives as they go along. Please, I want to ask you guys, don't read the newspaper and don't take the opinion of a reporter as what the Department of Labor said. Over the weekend, we've received numerous snippets out of newspapers, even one from the Namibian government stating that the government has to ensure that employers pay their employees. That's creating unnecessary panic with employers. We need to understand that although it was an Afrikaans article, it was not for our country. So please, whenever this is finished, we will have your contact details. So whenever things are updated from the Department of Labor, we will make sure that you are informed. Now, to start off with labor law, it's definitely not easy. I think there's a lot of questions that might arise out of today's webinar. So I just want to say that UIF has implemented a TERS employer relief scheme, which entails that you have to apply on behalf of your employees. Now, what has happened is the department said that instead of 1,000 employees applying for UIF, let's rather have one employer applying on behalf of their employees. Now, there's two different scenarios that is applicable on an employer that applies for this TERS scheme. First of all, any employer registered with UIF and whose contributions are up to date can apply. Why is this important? We do get a lot of questions. People that's got self-employed, not registered at UIF. Unfortunately, that is one of the prerequisites for you to apply for the scheme, is that you need to be registered with UIF. It needs to be up to date. What's also important to note is it is for an employer who can not afford to pay its employees for a period not exceeding 3 months. Now, the Department of Labour did inform us that if this lockdown goes beyond the period of 3 months, then obviously the Department of Labour will continue with the contribution scheme. Your claims should include directors' remuneration if the directors also paid UIF. And then this TERS scheme also includes any domestic employee. And then very important, that is what has changed and Willie referred to earlier, is also employees in essential services that falls ill or self-quarantines due to COVID-19. Now in the PowerPoint presentation, you will see there is email information where you can send an email to. I want to stress that the department is overwhelmed with emails at the moment, so it takes them a few days to do a return email if you do send it to the COVID-19 TERS Labour email address. If you struggle with them, you're welcome to contact us. We've got all the documentation to our disposal and we will gladly forward it to you to assist your employees. Now, I want to stress also that these applications are delinked from the normal UIF benefits. So this won't hamper your benefits that is currently in the kitty. So the department has made available 30 billion Rand to accommodate employers that are struggling during this period. Remember, your closure must be directly linked to COVID-19. You file your claim, and that's the first step. When you file your claim, there's a few documents that you need to submit. First of all, and that's what's a bit unsettling to some employers, you have to have at least 3 months certified bank statements available, at least between 3 to 6 months payroll information. There is a template that I will send you with critical employee information, and that's very important. I will refer to that a bit later on again. Then you will have to sign a memorandum of agreement if you employ 10 or more employees, and then also a letter of authority if somebody else is dealing with the claim on your behalf. Then you will need a confirmation of your bank account letter, which must be certified. Now, employers ask us, where do they get this information? Now, guys, online banking is amazing because you are able through online banking to get all this information right through your bank. It's stamped, you can download the PDF and then you can submit it. You don't have to open a dedicated bank account for UIF payments. That bank account is if there is an agreement between a bargaining council and an employers organization and a union with UIF. Now, I just want to, for a moment, stand still at the bargaining council. So if your company is registered with one of the bargaining councils, I'm not sure you would have seen that the only bargaining council currently that has an agreement with UIF is the Textile Bargaining Council. That means the bargaining council as a unit will take over the payment of these funds and pay directly to the employees. Now, in my opinion, this has some far-reaching implications because what we have said to our clients is you are able to allow your employees to take leave during this period. You will be allowed to let them go into credit with leave, be that you have an agreement with the employees, so they must have a signed application for leave. Then the bargaining council, if they facilitate this payment, you as an employer won't be able to recredit your employee the leave. So what we have done is, for some of our clients, we've said, okay, let's allow the wage staff to go into a credit. This oak has 10 days leave, we will allow him to take 15 days leave. Once the payment is received from UIF, we will credit him with the 5 days that they will pay out. So we would, in other words, give him back 5 days leave. If a bargaining council facilitates this payment, you won't be able to know if these employees actually received this money or not. But that's a point for another day. That's the only bargaining council. So MIPCO, the metal engineering industries, the food and allied services, none of those bargaining councils as of today has an agreement with UIF to facilitate this payment process. So it is our opinion that you submit your claim, let it go through the electronic process at the Department of Labour, and then get feedback from them. So step one would be to submit all of this documentation to the dedicated email inbox for the COVID-19 UIF claims. Section 2, step 2 would be that the UIF department will return back to the client to say, you do qualify, or the following documentation is still outstanding. If you do qualify, this is the amount we pay. And I want to stand still with this for a moment. The benefit will only pay the salaries of the affected workers during the closure, capped at 17,712 Rand on a sliding scale between 38% and 60%. If the employee is paid less than the national minimum wage, then they will be remunerated on the national minimum wage. It is important, guys, that we need to understand that if you've got an employee earning 25,000 Rand, it's not what they're going to get. Okay, this is important information because people tend to think that if I submit a claim to UIF, I will get my full remuneration. You won't get your full remuneration. We will only know once your application has been submitted to UIF. None of us, no other company will be able to calculate this contribution beforehand. UIF takes into consideration, still the UIF Act will apply for the calculation of this benefit. The amount of years that the employee contributed, the wages of the employee during the contribution period, and then obviously the period in which the company will then be closed. So that is very, very, very important. Then if we move on, currently we don't want employers to give employees unpaid leave. We want these guys to go and be able to buy food and to look after themselves. It was no directive, it was just the Minister of Labour spoke over the news, and he clearly asked that employers please consider rather applying for the TERS than allowing unpaid leave. We did phone the Department of Labour, and that's the confusing part, and that's where we get back to at the fact that there's no template for this. We really don't know what's lying ahead. If you phone the Department of Labour, they will tell you that you're not allowed to take annual leave, you're not allowed to do unpaid leave, but it is our opinion that in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, it is still the prerogative of the employer to expect employees to take leave. But please note that it is best for you to ensure that your employee completes a leave form, even if it's electronically. Complete a leave form. That's the agreement between you and the employee for them to take leave. Nothing stops you from reducing annual shutdown, if you've got an annual shutdown over December, to make it maybe only a week shutdown and let them work. And I would say let's utilize the leave until the Department of Labour advises us otherwise. And that brings us back a little bit to essential services as well. We've got employees that works in essential services who has reduced working hours. Now, you will see that the document that the department populates for the employee information form, like I said earlier, it will also include employee banking details. But what is important, there is a different column that indicates short hours worked. So the department said that they will allow the employer to pay, let's say for instance, you have to work 45 hours this week due to short hours that you only worked 30 hours. So you can apply for the TERS scheme for the difference between the 30 hours and the 45 hours by completing that specific column in that Excel sheet. If you don't know, it's named sheet number 3 if you do receive the email, but please contact us. It is important that that sheet is completed correctly. Otherwise, the department might just send it back and forth, and then you guys will struggle with the documentation. Then if we move on to workman's compensation, we must please take note of the fact that this workman's compensation is only applicable to occupations at risk. It's not for a normal employee sitting at home or somebody that might have had an injury on duty before the lockdown, fell off a ladder, broke a leg, something like that. It's got nothing to do with it. This is specifically for COVID-19. We've got our very high exposure risk occupations, which is our healthcare workers, our doctors, laboratory personnel, morgue workers, high risk risk occupations, which is delivery staff, nurses, medical transport workers. Then we've got our medium exposure risk jobs, that is in close contact with infected people. And then low risk exposure is the guys that work with general public, maybe like having a meat world open or something like that. People that work with the public, they have got a low risk. Now, assessment of permanent impairment shall be determined 3 months after diagnosis. That is when somebody contracted the COVID-19 disease and has got impairment after 3 months. The degree of impairment will then be established. And then the benefits, temporary to total disablement. Payments shall only be made for a period of 30 days. So this is very different than what it is from a normal claim should you have an injury on duty. Suspected and unconfirmed cases for self-quarantine recommended by a registered medical practitioner. In accordance with the guidelines, the employer will still be liable for remuneration for the days of absence. And this is very important to note that if you have an employee in essential services and that employee goes home, they feel ill, they self-quarantine for 14 days, they've not officially been diagnosed, so it's not a confirmed COVID-19, but as a precautionary measure, that person stays home. You as an employer are still liable for that person's salary, and it is called special leave. So you're not allowed to deduct that from sick leave, you're not allowed to deduct that from annual leave, but you are allowed to claim that back from the Department of Labour via your TERS application. In the event that the case are confirmed as a COVID-19 disease, the disablement shall be paid from the date of diagnosis up to a period of 30 days. It is also stated that the employer will still be expected to pay remuneration and claim that remuneration back from the Department of Labour via your normal workman's compensation claims. So if we look at the documents required, you will see there's quite a list of documents required. It's employer's report of an occupational disease, notice of occupational disease, and then, very important, exposure and medical questionnaire. Why are they doing this? It is important for the department to establish if the person that fell ill of COVID-19 actually contracted this disease while they were attending to their duties, like a doctor or a nurse or a morgue worker. If that cannot be confirmed, then the claim cannot be paid. We can just imagine how many people will try to claim from the compensation fund for COVID-19, but it isn't confirmed. So then a medical report and exposure history is very important. And then the normal compensation fund progress medical reports will then follow. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see how to submit a claim. We have got COIDA, which is the Comp Easy Fund, Comp Care, and then Federated Employers Mutual to claim these funds. And that's over to you, Willie.
Great, thank you. That's a mouthful of information that you gave us there. Just a quick question before we move on the submission of the UIF TERS application. So there's quite a lot of uncertainty about when this lockdown will end. When do you suggest business owners start submitting these applications? Because I mean, I can imagine some of them don't know when to, up until when will they pay guys and so forth. What suggestion do you have for business owners?
Okay, but it's important to note that if you, well, I don't think any business will 100% survive what is happening in our country. I would say that submit the TERS application as soon as possible. The department did note on Friday already they received 4,000 applications from employers themselves. And that 4,000, obviously, if you go and look at it, you've got maybe 100 employees per employer. You can just imagine how many applications has been submitted. So I would say the sooner the better. The turnaround time for claims, and that's for stage 1, is 10 to 14 days for the department to review your application. But it is important to understand that payment won't happen up until after the lockdown. It's not good news to us, but at least we would know that something's coming our way if we completed the application. So I'd say any employer that employs people, just go and do the application. Even if you have one employee, just imagine if this goes beyond April, May, June, you don't have the finances to pay your employees. At least the fund said that they will pay for a period of 3 months, which means we look at April, May, and June at least, until they update and change the regulation. I'd say for a period of 3 months starting end of April.
Okay, and is it correct in saying that if this extends beyond the current lockdown period to month 2 or 3, that's an application that needs to be submitted on a monthly basis?
Yes, we have to resubmit. It's like a continuation payment. So at the end of, well, almost at the end of every month, we have to resubmit the bank statements and a new well, it's not a new application, bank statements and a fresh application to say that this company is still in distress and still can't afford to pay its employees. And that might extend beyond. Let's say, for instance, the lockdown ends on 16 April. But by end of April and end of May, my company is still in dire need of finances. You continue with the application because you can still prove that the company is suffering. Okay. So it won't stop necessarily on the 16th of April.
I see. Okay, great. Yeah, that's a mouthful, guys, and we'll leave some questions for you guys at the end of the session. Thank you very much, Marty. Then that's I'm going to continue now. So one thing that I wanted to chat about is the Essential Services Permit. Now, it's quite a fairly straightforward process where you can go to the bizportal.gov.za, and that's where you can apply for your business permit if you do deliver essential services. So there's 28 different categories, but one of the things that popped up was if you are trading as a sole proprietor or a partnership or a trust, how do you actually apply for this permit, which is kind of a problem if you need to do that on the SIPC portal. So what the solution that guys came up with, if you are trading as a sole proprietor or a partnership or a trust, and you need to deliver essential services to your clients, what you maybe can do is you can actually go and request them, because they hopefully have a permit, to issue you with a letter of some sort so that you can move and deliver services in the meanwhile. So it's just something to think about if you've been experiencing that problem or if your clients have been experiencing that problem. And then I just want to, before we move on, there's something that I saw which was quite inspiring. There's a company called Cafe Lux, and they only sell coffee. What these guys have done in this lockdown, they've actually started selling grocery hampers, which allowed them to continue trading as essential services. The same thing happened to Bounce. Bounce is like it's a gym or some health facility, and those guys actually started. So think about those types of things. If you've got a network and you currently aren't able to trade, maybe it's a good idea to think about something like that. Cool. I'm going to move on to the SARS things. SARS is actually, I think, the easiest bit of all of the relief schemes. I just felt that I just quickly need to run through it just to make sure that you understand what it entails. So they've basically announced 3 relief schemes. The one is the SARS ETI, 500 Rand per person. So in a nutshell, how that works, they mentioned that if someone earns a salary below 6,500 Rand, you'll be able to deduct 500 Rand in every month on that employee. The question is to whom it applies. So ETI is the Employer Tax Incentive Scheme, and that's a scheme that was started quite a while ago to assist the youth, to assist employers in employing the youth. So they've kind of said, so who does it apply to? And I think your accountant will be able to calculate it for you or look at your payroll. But I also suspect that all the major payroll, so once there's the change in legislation, they quickly go and fix their software, and the software then actually calculates the amounts that you are able to claim. So we've not seen anything come through from the major payroll guys, but I'm going to assume that it is going to happen very soon. So once you produce your EMP return, it will actually appear on there. But just to give you a rundown, who does it apply to? You must be paying PAYE on a monthly basis. So if you've got a payroll where you only pay UIF, this is not going to work for you. You need to be tax compliant. Okay. And then which employees does it apply to? So it applies to all employees on the current ETI scheme with a salary less than 6,500 Rand. What will you be able to deduct? You'll be able to deduct an additional 500 Rand. So if you're already on an ETI scheme, you will know that. So instead of the 1,000 Rand that you will be claiming on the first year for those qualifying employees, you'll be able to claim an additional 500. It also applies to guys that's never qualified for the ETI schemes. So the ETI scheme applies to up to a certain age. Now, the question was asked, what about people older than 30? And it seems like they have relaxed that rule as well. So everyone that receives a salary less than 6,500 Rand per month, you will be able to deduct the 500 Rand. That's how it's currently standing as of last week. Big question that we got was, so when how can we start claiming for this? So it does not apply up to March. So it's only applicable from April. So in other words, at the end of April, you will be submitting your EMP return. At that point in time, you'll be able to claim these credits. The same with May, June and July. So for the following 4 months, it will be claimed via e-filing. So on your PAYE return and your accountant, when they submit it, there will be a field which will allow them to claim those credits. And it will be done by e-filing. What we need to note here, this grant is there to assist the employers to pay their salary bill. All right, so to the next slide. So SARS, the 20% of your PAYE. So once again, who does it apply to? It applies to businesses with a turnover less than 50 million. You must be tax compliant and you must be paying PAYE on a monthly basis. If you don't pay any PAYE on a monthly basis, this is not going to apply to you. What you need to understand, and a lot of guys think that when they announced you're only going to pay like 80% of your PAYE, that this is a discount. It is not a discount. It's only a deferment of your PAYE liability. So how would it work? So you would submit it via e-filing. You would pay only the 80%. Where normally you would incur penalties and interest by doing the 80% payment, this will not apply now. So I'm going to take a calculated guess that SARS will amend their systems on the back end to deal with this. With all the requirements, but you submit it via e-filing, you do your payment. But what they said is, as of the 7th of September 2020, they will be expecting you to repay the 20% that you have not paid. So currently, we don't know if they want 4 installments, if you've done it over the 4-month period or once off, but you will definitely start repaying that on the 7th of September. So yeah, it's a deferment. I'd strongly advise guys to defer these things. If you can start, you know, make your full contributions. But I mean, it's once again, the information we're giving you is so that you can decide what's best for your business and how would you use it in order for you to keep cash positive. But it's very important to understand that you will have to repay those monies at some point in time. The same with the provisional tax deferment scheme. So how it used to work previously, half year and full year. So you would pay 50% on your estimated taxable profit in the middle of the year on your first provisional, and then 50% on your second provisional. so what they've done is they've slightly relaxed those rules. So what they've said is if your first provisional payment is due from the 1st of April to the 30th of September, then you only need to pay 15% on your estimated total taxable liability. The second one stays more or less exactly the same. So anything from a second provisional due from the 1st of April to the 31st of March, you will pay 50%. And then previously there was the rule where you can make top-up payments, and that was 6 months after your year end. So currently you can pay the remainder 35% after year end within that 6 months period without actually attracting any interest and penalties. Once again, you don't need to apply for this. You need to be compliant. You can submit it via e-filing, and your accountant would be able to assist you in submitting that. Good. So before that is for me from the SARS side of things. What we will do is once we finish here, we'll open the floor and we'll get some Q&As going. Daniel.
Yes.
Welcome. We've skipped you in the beginning.
Hi.
Introduce yourself and take us through this. I think a lot of guys has been waiting for this specifically to get more clarity in terms of what types of funding is available there. There's some certain schemes that's been been announced, but I mean, you've also added some additional stuff which I wasn't aware of. So, but great, go for it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much for having me with you today. Really a great initiative by you. So thanks for putting it together and driving this. I think it really is critical. Lots of people have a lot of questions at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of miscommunication in the market. So I think things like this, webinars like this, are hugely valuable. Quick introduction. Hi, everyone. This is Dan Goldberg from Bridgement. So I am the founder of Bridgement and the CEO. My company is a fintech platform which basically offers invoice financing and credit facilities to businesses. We focus on small businesses, and the type of facilities we offer vary anywhere from as small as 20,000 Rand and up to 5 million Rand on the higher side of things. And we've built quite a smart technology platform which integrates with the various major accounting packages like Xero, QuickBooks Online, Sage, and that helps remove the need for huge amounts of paperwork and lengthy forms. And so that means that we're able to make it much simpler for businesses to access finance and much quicker. So obviously, being a business that offers funding, we offer credit facilities to businesses. A lot of our clients, have been massively impacted by this pandemic. And of course, one of the things that we immediately set out to do was to see, what can we do to help our clients. And we of course, where clients have been impacted by the pandemic, of course we go into negotiations and arrange for alternative payment plans and or payment holidays, similar to what some of the banks have announced, and I'll be talking a bit about that shortly. But we wanted to also try and help our clients understand what's actually available. There's a lot of information going around. There are a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different sort of relief measures or relief schemes out there, but not a lot of clarity on how to actually access them or apply for them. And this is, I think what Willie mentioned a bit earlier, this is a fast-changing environment. We put this PowerPoint slides together on Friday. Since Friday, a lot's happened, but I think bear in mind that this is where we sort of stand at the moment, but things are changing quickly, and there's new information coming out every day. So bear in mind that the application processes or the requirements, etc., or the qualification criteria could change any day. So just to give you a bit of a overview on what exactly I'm going to be talking about over the next 4 or so slides. So I'm going to be talking about the various initiatives, the various funding that has been made available for SMEs to help them get through this storm that we're all going through at the moment. And I've sort of split them up by firstly looking at the main initiatives or schemes that have been set up by the Department of Small Business Development, abbreviated as DSBD. And there are 4 schemes there which I'll be talking about. I'll also be talking about some of the other government initiatives from other departments like the DTIC and the IDC, the Industrial Development Corporation. So I'll be talking about those. And then I'll also be talking about some of the relief measures that the Big 4 banks have announced over the last 2 or so weeks. After that, I'll also be talking a bit about the other private sector relief initiatives or schemes out there, such as the Rupert family and the Oppenheimer family funds. And then lastly, I'll also talk a bit more about some more general advice that we've been giving our customers, as well as some of our partners and other SMEs. So just to start with that, firstly, looking at the DSBD, the Department of Small Business Development. So they have set up 4 initiatives. The first one being called the Business Growth and Resilience Facility. The second one being called the SME Relief Finance Scheme. And the third one being called the CIFA Debt Restructuring Facility. And then the fourth one is really something that's targeted more towards the informal sector. So firstly, to start, the Business Growth and Resilience Facility. That is mostly focused on businesses who are locally manufacturing or supplying hygiene and medical products. So it's specifically focused on businesses that are producing things required for the response to COVID-19. The form of funding that this facility offers is sort of in the form of short-term funding. It's working capital, inventory finance, bridging finance, purchase order finance, equipment finance. And it really only applies to businesses that are providing those sort of essential hygiene and medical goods. There has been communication that has hinted towards the fact that they might expand the types of businesses or the industry sectors that facility will apply to. But as it stands currently, it only applies to businesses that are providing essential goods, hygiene, medical products, etc. In terms of the qualification requirements for that facility, it requires ownership of 100% South African. It requires that over 70% of your staff are South African. Now, just a quick note on that. We have seen coverage and a lot of people questioning the legitimacy of a requirement like that. A requirement that your staff, over 70% of your staff are South African, is deemed xenophobic, according to many lawyers out there. And actually, some lawyers have brought up an old court case, which unfortunately I don't have on hand right now. But there is an old court case which had similarly taken on government for using a qualification requirement similar to this, which excluded foreigners, and it was deemed xenophobic. The government department lost the court case, and so that ruling has set precedent, which means that it is possible that if someone actually goes and challenges this and takes this to court, it is possible that that criteria of having over 70% South African employees might change. But as it currently stands, I'm not aware of anyone that has challenged that requirement in court yet. But so as it currently stands, that requirement is in force. Businesses have to be registered and compliant with SARS and UIF. As I mentioned, the industries, it's really only guys that are manufacturing or supplying hygiene and medical products. And also that the manufacturing of these goods have to be done locally. They have to have been registered with SIPC prior to the 28th of Feb 2020. Lastly, the government has mentioned that they will be prioritizing businesses that are owned by women, youth, and other people with disabilities. Before I get on to the how to apply and the documents to submit, I'll start talking a bit about the SME Relief Finance Scheme, because they have very similar application processes and documents to submit. So the SME Relief Finance Scheme is different to the Business Growth and Resilience Facility in that it is firstly applicable to a broader group of businesses, in that it is not restricted only to businesses, that are manufacturing and supplying essential goods. So that's the one thing to note, that it applies to various businesses across industry sectors. And this is particularly to help businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19. So the first facility was more to help businesses to meet the growing demand for essential goods, whereas the second facility or relief finance scheme is to help businesses that have been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, which typically will be businesses that are not within the essential services and products definition. And the other way that the relief finance scheme differs is that it is a soft loan, and it will tend to be longer term finance than the resilience, the growth and resilience facilities. So our understanding at the moment is that the soft loan will be charged at a rate of prime less 5% for a period of up to 6 months, although the department has communicated that that period may be extended on a case-to-case basis. And the maximum loan amount will be 500,000 Rand. And of course, that will be dependent on your business, the size of your business, your cash flows, etc. The requirements, the qualification requirements are very much similar to the previous growth and resilience facility that I just went through. Same requirements in terms of South African ownership and South African employees, as well as SARS and UIF being registered and compliant. The big difference, as I mentioned, being that it applies to all industries. Similar requirement that the business has to have been registered on SIPC before the 28th of Feb 2020. So this, no new startups could apply for this, and this would also exclude informal businesses, which I'll get to on the fourth scheme on the next slide. And similarly, they'll be prioritizing women, youth, and people with disabilities. And you do have to show that you have been negatively affected by the pandemic. So in terms of how to apply, there's been a lot of confusion about this. And a large part of the reason for the confusion is that the department initially came out and said, if you want to access this finance, you have to go and sign up on this website, which is listed over here as smmesa.gov.za. Now, this created a lot of confusion. A lot of people went and signed up on this website. First of all, the website crashed many times the day it was launched and the following days. I think there was a huge demand. The last figures I saw that there was about 80,000 businesses that had already registered. And ultimately, I think people got confused because they thought that by registering on the site, they had applied. Turns out that that's not the case. And there was further clarification that came later on last week, which basically said, businesses have to register on that site, but that is just a qualification requirement. Basically, they're saying you have to join our database of SMEs before or if you want to be able to apply, but that's not actually the application itself. And then the question is, so then how do you actually apply? So as of Friday, and I'm not sure if there's been any updated information this morning or today, I haven't seen anything yet, but as of Friday, the department communicated that there will be an online application available on any of the websites, the official Department of Small Business Development website, as well as on the CIFA and CEDA websites. And I believe you're meant to be able to upload your documents over there, although there have been emails that have been shared to also send applications in. Although my suggestion would be not to send to those emails. The likelihood is that they've been massively flooded, and that if there is an online application process that is actually made available, to rather follow that on one of those three websites listed there, the dsbd.gov.za, sifa.org.za, and ceda.org.za. The government has said that applications will take 7 working days to process, and if approved, could take up to about 5 days for the funds to actually be dispersed. In terms of documents to submit for both of them, it's pretty much the usual documentation that you might have to submit at a traditional lending or finance institution. You would certainly not have to submit any of these to Bridgement because we leverage tech and alternative data, but to government, you definitely would have to submit them. So some of the documents that you'll have to submit are SIPSI, FICA docs, the usual proof of address, IDs, certified ID copies of the directors or members if it's a CC, 3 months bank statements, latest AFS and management accounts from at least the last 3 months, business profile and execution plan, and then if applicable 6-month cash flow projections, relevant industry certifications, contracts and purchase orders if you have them, as well as a breakdown of what the funding is actually being requested or will be used for. And then specifically for the SMME Relief Finance Scheme, you will also have to submit any statements of any other funding that you have with banks or other lenders like Bridgement or any other traditional alternative lenders out there. As well as if you're applying for rental relief or payroll relief, you'll have to include a lease agreement, or for payroll relief, include employee details registered with the UIF, as well as all of their banking details. So those are the first 2 schemes that are being run by the Department of the Small Business Development, and probably those 2 are going to be the most relevant to the people on this call. And then just to go to the next slide, I think I might have exited over here. Correct. I need to, there we go. So looking then at the third initiative that the Department of Small Business Development is running, that is the SIFA debt restructuring facility. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, and the reason for that is that this has a very limited scope, being that it only applies to businesses, SMEs, that have already been funded by SIFA. And so if your business is not already funded by SIFA, then it's not even worth looking at this. Essentially, our understanding is that this is meant to be basically a payment holiday program, similar to what the banks, as well as my company, are offering clients. It is a payment holiday for SIFA clients to get delayed payments or deferred payments on their SIFA debt or their loans or facilities that they already have from SIFA. And then lastly, the government also announced there's still some information that is pending on this, so the details aren't completely clear yet, but they did announce towards the end of last week that they will have specific facilities to cater for the informal sector. So, a lot of people, the 2 facilities that I walked you through previously are all focused on registered businesses. As you saw, one of the requirements was that you had to have been a registered business on SIPSI before the 28th of February this year. But of course, that would exclude your whole informal sector, and that includes a huge amount of people, whether it is sole proprietors, spas or shops, freelancers, individual contractors, and things like that. There's a huge amount of micro enterprises and sole props out there that are also in need of funding at the moment and debt relief, which this is specifically catered towards. The department has mentioned that there will be 5 types of support for the spaza shops, including networking and bulk buying power from the pre-approved wholesalers, and also that there'll be a spaza shop scheme to access seed capital to buy stock and as well as credit facilities. The details on qualification and how to apply are yet to be announced. We expect them to be announced sometime this week, and so my only advice here is just to monitor the various Department of Small Business Development websites, as well as the CIFA and CEDA ones. it's also a good idea to probably, if you're on social media, on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn for that matter, it's a good idea to follow them. They tend to be pretty good about not announcing things there. And to be honest, I think I probably see them announce things there before seeing them elsewhere. So then moving on to some of the other government schemes. And so, the previous 4 I was talking about are all being run by the Department of Small Business Development. Now, there are other schemes out there run by the Department of Tourism, the IDC, the Industrial Development Corporation in partnership with the DTRC, as well as the NEF. And what you might find is that some of the previous schemes that I mentioned, focused much more on smaller businesses. As you saw, the maximum loan amount anyone could get was 500,000 Rand. And so I've seen questions out there. People have been asking, has anyone seen what relief measures are out there for larger businesses? Because there are many businesses that sort of fall outside of the scope of the Small Business Department of Small Business Development. And so there are some other initiatives from other departments. And these are the ones that I've come across. There is the Department of Tourism, which has allocated 200 million Rand into a tourism relief fund to assist SMEs in the tourism and hospitality sectors, which of course have been some of the hardest hit, if not the hardest hit. And they currently haven't specified exactly what the maximum grant will be per customer. The requirements they have said that the businesses have to be registered legal entities in South Africa. They have to have been trading for at least a year. They have to be black-owned entities. They have to have turnover under 2.5 million Rand. So this is really talking about small businesses. You'll see next, the IDC is focused on much bigger businesses. And then, they have to also guarantee employment for staff for a minimum of 3 months. To get more information on that, you'll see in the slideshow when we share it afterwards that you can visit the Department of Tourism's dedicated page on that, and the documents that they'll require. So far, they've listed a proof of tax compliance, minimum wage compliance, and UIF registration, although I imagine they'll require a lot more than that, although they have not specified that yet. Onto the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC and DTRC. They've got 2 particular programs. One is a long-term funding. It's a 300 million Rand fund for COVID essential product manufacturers, offering loans up to 30 million Rand at a very low 2.5% interest rate per annum for a maximum term of 48 months. This is for working capital and plant/equipment requirements. And then the other program they have is the short-term fund for essential product manufacturers at a rate of prime plus 1% interest per year for a maximum term of 3 months. They also are offering guarantees, 2% per annum, and for once-off contract finance or imports funding, revolving credits, guarantees for imports, etc. The criteria, so for the long-term funding, you have to be a registered legal entity in South Africa, trade history for at least a year. Company must have a valid contract, purchase order, letter of intent. It is applicable to manufacturers of COVID-19 essential goods only at the moment. And your companies with BE level 4 or greater will be sort of encouraged or will be prioritized. And then for the short-term fund, similar requirements in terms of registered legal entity. You have to be registered as a vendor with the government or a large multinational retail chain, local retail chain, trade history of at least a year, and track record in the manufacturing or supply of comparable products. And you have to be able to show profitability prior to the shutdown. For more information on these and how to apply, you can get all of that on the IDC's page. And there's a long list of documents which I'm not going to run through now, but these are also listed on their website, and you'll be able to, of course, get them in this PowerPoint, which will be shared. And then lastly, the NEF has 500K to 10 million Rand loans available at 0% interest for the first year, and then 2.5% interest thereafter. It's a 200 million Rand fund allocated also by the DTRC, I believe, and this is for businesses to purchase machinery, raw materials, and other items. This is restricted to Black-owned businesses only, and again, you must produce essential goods. You must also be a registered supplier for a large retail chain or institution, public or multinational institution or government, and they must have agreed to purchase whatever it is that you're supplying or manufacturing for them, and you have to have tax compliance and commercial viability. And for more information, you can head on over to the NEF website. Then just to go through the banking sector relief so far, this is again changing almost every day. As of Friday, late Friday afternoon, this was the latest information that I had seen. So Standard Bank had come out and basically created a 3-month installment relief program for all businesses under 20 million Rand a year turnover. They had to, in terms of the criteria, it was basically for any registered South African business under 20 million Rand turnover that had any of the listed accounts, the business current account, business launch, business lending accounts, and they had to have been paid up to date and in good standing. And this is an opt-out program, so it is automatically applied to all businesses that qualify for that. And if they don't want to take the payment holiday, then they would have to opt out, and then they can continue on their sort of initially agreed payment program. This payment holiday is 3 months. Standard Bank has been clear in saying that businesses will continue to be charged interest and fees, and these will be capitalized, and the new installments will start after 3 months. As I mentioned, how to apply, there's no application process. This is opt-out. It is automatically applied to you if you are a Standard Bank customer and you qualify for, and you meet all of those requirements. In terms of the other banks, they've been less giving on this front. Basically, FNB has said that they will work with you, and they are offering payment holidays for up to 3 months. Similarly, interest and fees will continue to accrue and will be capitalized at preferential interest rates, they've said. Similar requirements around your accounts being in good standing and all paid up. But the big difference is that FNB, it is opt-in. So you have to actually go on your app. I believe you can't do it from internet banking. So on your app, you will see an option that says coronavirus or COVID support. And you have to click on that and follow the sort of steps on from that in order to apply for this relief, to opt in for it. ABSA, the latest I've seen is that they are offering a 3-month payment deferral or reduced installment amounts. Similarly, interest and fees will continue to accrue and be capitalized. They have said that all customers qualify, so different to Standard Bank, which was only applying it to businesses under 20 million Rand annual turnover. So ABSA says everyone applies, but you have to apply. You have to actually apply and request it. So it's not opt-out; it is opt-in, or you have to actually request it and show that you've been financially impacted by the pandemic. And of course, you similarly have to, have all your accounts in good standing. And then lastly, Nedbank has said that they don't have any special COVID-19 relief measures, and that basically they will continue to assist clients per their usual normal lending policies, which will or can include bespoke payment arrangements and debt restructuring, which includes term extensions and reduced installments. They have also said that on credit card products, the minimum repayment amount has been halved to 2.5% from April onward for 3 months. That's to help you retain some cash flow. And they've also said penalty fees up to the value of 200,000 Rand at an overall portfolio level will be waived on early withdrawals from investment funds. So if you have investment funds that were locked in, that you couldn't withdraw from, such as a fixed deposit, they are waiving those penalty fees up to 200K if you're in need to access some of those emergency funds. And you can see all of every bank has dedicated pages for more information. Then I'm going to move on to some of the other private sector relief. There's a lot happening here, and there's actually a lot more to still be announced. Unfortunately, I can't talk about some of the other initiatives because they haven't been made public yet, and the details have not been communicated. But so far, the big ones that have been announced, the exciting ones, are the Oppenheimer Fund, the Rupert and Remgrow Fund. Both of those are $1 billion each, as well as the Motsepe Fund, Patrice Motsepe and the Motsepe Foundation, another $1 billion, as well as NASPERS, which contributed $1.5 billion. In terms of what they're actually offering, so these are a bit more complicated. Each fund or each private individual over here is they're operating completely separately. They all have different requirements, different application processes, and different forms of funding. The important thing also to clarify here is that initially, when these were announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa, he mentioned that these were, I think he used the terminology grants, which was later clarified that they actually weren't. So what they, and I think the same mistake may have even been with some of the funding, the relief schemes and initiatives from the Department of Small Business Development. So these will not be grants. This is not free money. These will be in the form of loans, but similar to the Small Business Development Department, they are very much soft loans, so very low or no interest loans. So firstly, on the Oppenheimer side of things, they are offering 5-year, 0% interest-free loans. The way that this is going to be run is through a trust that they've set up called the South African Future Trust, and that will manage the 1 billion rand that they've pledged. And funds will be transferred directly to employees of businesses via interest-free loans, where the employees themselves are not liable. They don't carry any liability. So the money will be lent to the business, but it will be transferred directly to the employees. So this money is to pay salaries. So it's an important distinction on the Oppenheimer funds. But the employees have no liability on that. So the liability sits with the business, but it is a 0% interest-free loan, and it is for 5 years. The qualification requirements: businesses under 25 million rand a year turnover, trading for at least 2 years. They have to also show that they were sustainable businesses prior to the 29th of Feb 2020. And they have to show that they have been adversely impacted by the pandemic. And they must be a client of ABSA, FNB, Standard Bank, or Nedbank, one of the big 4 banks. And the reason for that is that the application process is done through your bank. You cannot apply directly to the South African Future Trust. They do have a website with information, but on the website, they will tell you that you have to apply through your bank. The banks were meant to announce more information on this, on how to actually apply, but I haven't seen clarification on that yet. So I imagine it will come through in the next day or two. It is likely that, you know, for example, FNB, where they've got this dedicated COVID support thing on the FNB app, you will likely apply for the South African Future Trust through that as well. It will all be grouped together. So you can go through and look at all of those links that are included on the previous slide to go to each of the respective banks. You have to apply to whichever bank you currently bank with. Documents to submit, pretty much the usual registration docs, or master reference number if you're a trust, ID and business address if you're a sole prop. Also important to highlight there that the Oppenheimer Fund will apply to sole proprietors. A valid pay-as-you-earn number registered with SARS, valid income tax number registered with SARS, and confirmation of permanent employment status of employees. Then moving on to the Rupert and Remgrow billion rand. So they have set up, they are offering 250,000 to 1 million rand 5-year loans. The way those loans will work is that it will be 0% interest-free and installment-free for the first year of that 5-year period, and then interest will be charged at prime for years 2 up until year 5, and repayments will be done monthly over that period. This funding will be for working capital, for salaries, rent, HPs, loan installments, for sole props and formalized SMEs. So good to note that this also applies to sole props. Also to highlight here is that the Oppenheimer Fund seems to only be focusing on helping to pay salaries for businesses, whereas the Rupert and Remgrow one is, offering more general working capital and not limiting it only for the use of salaries, but also for rent and other needs. Qualification requirements on the Rupert and Remgrow funding: you have to be fully compliant entity in terms of SARS, SIP, CUIF, etc. Formal registered entity, and ownership does not have to be South African. To apply, so the way that Rupert and Remgrow are doing it is through a business that they have a large shareholding in, a large stake in, which is called Business Partners, which is an alternative financier that is not a bank. But they are running all of the applications through that. So they have a dedicated page on the Business Partners site, and you'll be able to fill that online form over there. And that's the details of which actually came through late on Friday night. So I actually can update this link. I believe the current link should still work, and you should be able to still get to the application form from that link. But if it is broken, then you will be able to see the new application link on their website, and they'll require similar information, I believe, as well as AFS if for AFS for 2019, which they currently say is non-negotiable, but I am not sure how strictly they will enforce that. And then there is the Motsepe funding. I'm going to skim over this and the NASPERS one, and the reason being that it currently seems like it is excluding small businesses, SMEs. The Motsepe funding is going to be used to purchase sanitizers, disinfectants, PPE and other equipment, specifically for healthcare, hospitals, etc. And NASPERS is contributing 5 million Rand to the Solidarity Fund, as well as 1 billion Rand to provide PPE and medical supplies to public health services as well. Also seems like they are currently excluding SMEs, so I will not spend much time on those two. And then lastly, just to wrap it up, we, a lot of our clients have been, looking for advice, looking at other options that they can, focus on and use to try and alleviate the cash flow pressures that they're currently experiencing. And the sort of 4 key things that we're mentioning to all of our clients is: one, on your supplier side, negotiate extended payment terms with suppliers where possible. It's a great way if you have a relationship where a supplier trusts you. If you can extend those terms, if you already have terms, see if you can get longer ones. That can definitely help you get through this period. Definitely speak to your landlords. We heard a bit about it earlier on, but engage. Everyone is going through this. I think there's definitely a sense of unity out there, at least from what I've seen. And so I believe people are willing to engage and come up with a workable solution. The last thing someone wants to do, like a landlord would want to do right now, is go and try to take legal action or evict you. And so I think speak to your landlord, see if you can negotiate extended terms, and come up with another plan. And then, yeah, I think that's
it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, and lastly, you can lastly, you can speak to your customers. If they're able to pay you quicker, that can help you manage your cash flow better. Try and move guys to COD if you're already offering them terms. See if anyone will put down deposits for orders or prepayments. And we're seeing a lot of businesses, especially the ones that are hardest hit, that are unable to trade at the moment. For example, restaurants. We've seen some innovative things coming out of them. One of those innovations has been restaurants starting to sell discounted vouchers for future trade. When the shutdown finishes, you can come in and claim your voucher. And, I got an SMS from one of these restaurants doing something like this. I've actually got a few, but one of them in particular sent an SMS saying, you can get this voucher at a discounted rate. 60% of your spend will go to paying our staff. to paying salaries. The other 40% will go towards keeping our restaurant open. So really some great ideas there. And then lastly, explore all alternatives. Bridgement being one of them. We assist SMEs with working capital and credit facilities every day. We're a great option to supplement any the other funding that a business may have, even if it's bank funding. And so, please feel free to get in touch. You can go to our website at www.bridgement.com, or you can also email us at support@bridgement.com, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. I hope you've found this all informative, and thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That was a whole mouthful and a lot of food for thought. So before we move on to the Q&A, just a quick one for you. We've been getting this question from a lot of guys. Is some of the businesses have already been experiencing cash flow issues before this lockdown. And obviously, by going into this lockdown, things have actually gone a lot worse. Are these guys going to be wasting their time, or is there some kind of a system or a leniency that will be shown towards those businesses when applying these applications, in these applications?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a really good question. You would have noticed that on some of the initiatives that I mentioned, some of them, some of the schemes do require that your business was sort of in good standing and was profitable and well before the pandemic actually started and before the shutdown actually started. So some of those schemes out there may preclude or exclude businesses that were in trouble beforehand, although I think many of them won't. My advice would be to businesses is to explore all of them. Businesses, every business runs into cash flow problems at some point in their lives. It is pretty normal. Obviously, certain industries have issues with cash flow more so than others. But it is a common problem, and it is one that we see being a fintech lending company. It is something that we see amongst many very large businesses that have cash flow problems. They are, really great, very valuable, very successful businesses, but just because of the sort of cash flow cycles and the terms that they have with their suppliers compared to their customers, they experience cash flow problems. So my suggestion is that I think all of the various funds out there that I just walked you through, including our own, are very understanding of this. They understand that businesses go through sort of various cash flow cycles, and they do run into cash flow problems at times, regardless of any pandemic. And so my suggestion is that it's always worth applying and exploring your options.
Right, thanks for that advice. And then tell me, we don't know how long this shutdown is going to continue. So would businesses not put themselves under a lot more pressure by raking up more debts in uncertain times? How would they deal with it? How would they know if they need to go and go through this process?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, you always want to make sure that if you're going to be taking on debt, that you're going to be able to repay it, because you're otherwise just going to be setting up yourself for failure down the line. I think that some of the initiatives out there are, they are very much aware of this, that the shutdown may go on for longer. Even if the shutdown ends soon, there may be other restrictions, and it may take a lot longer for businesses to get back up and running to where they were before. And so I think the answer to that would be every business needs to understand this for themselves, understand, what happens if worst case, it takes me 6 months, 9 months to get back to normal, or 12 months to get back to normal. Will I be able to make it through and meet my repayment commitments? I think some of the benefits of some of these funds, if you're lucky enough to access some of the funding, for example, from the Oppenheimer funding, getting a interest-free 5-year loan is, in my mind, incredibly helpful. you first of all will not find cheaper finance out there anywhere ever. 0% over 5 years gives you a lot of flexibility and a long time to pay it off. Now, I think if you should not. The shutdown could have effects for a long time, but 5 years, but certainly not up to 5 years. So I think some of those extended terms definitely help to get over some of the short-term hurdles that we are going to see over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So very important to consider the term. Make sure that you're not compounding any of your current problems, and always be realistic, and make sure that when you're taking funding, you're taking it because with the intention to repay it and the ability to repay it.
Yeah, thanks Daniel for all that valuable information. I think that's all from my side. Shall we go to the Q&A session, and then if someone wants some questions answered, please go to the chat box and type your answer. Please address your question to someone, and we'll get them to answer it.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, go for it.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Frikkie. Frikkie de Jager. I'm the owner of a hairdressing salon in Springs called Playboys Unisex, and we also do have a smaller salon in the Springs Mall. I've been in contact with Marty, and she's been of great assistance to us. I'm also a member of the EOHCB, which is the Employees Organization for Hairdressing, Cosmetology and Beauty. I just wanted to ask, thank you very much for this great get-together that we had on the phone now. I just want to know if I have any questions, can I directly speak to Marty and she can just give me all the info from all you guys that are specialists in your field?
Hello, Marty. Unmute your...
Oh,
There you go,
yeah.
Marty.
No, I think the question from Frikkie is, Frikkie, you're welcome. Any questions that you have, you can post to me, and I will gladly send it on to Billy and Daniel and Josh, when it's related to their industries. So you're more than welcome to do that.
What I'm going to do for everyone is, once we wrap up this session, I'm going to copy a link into the chat room, which you can click on there, and then you can just insert your name, your surname, your email address, and then select on the radio buttons on which areas you would need help. And once you've submitted it, I will also disperse that information through to the relevant people.
Thank you very much. That's awesome, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We have more questions. Anybody?
I'm done for now. Thank you. I'll be liaising with Marty from now on, because she's doing a great job already. So yeah, thank you guys. It was very informative.
Cool, guys. So if that's it, so I've just shared a link in the chat box. If you need more help, just click on that link and then copy it into your browser and submit it. What I'm going to do for you guys, I've got some email addresses. If I haven't got your email address, if you haven't subscribed through the landing page, please send me an email. I'm going to give you my email address now. Send me an email. I'm going to add you to the email list, and then I'll share for you guys this presentation. I'm also going to share the link where you can assist more help. And then we're going to try to, as this thing unfolds and as we get more updated information, I'm going to share it with you guys as we go along. So just to wrap up, Daniel, Mariki, thank you very much for the time that you've given me. We've done it really at a very fast pace. Last week we've never ever met each other, and today we're sitting here giving a 2-hour webinar to everyone and see if we can help out there to get guys more comfort and get them to make informed decisions to take their business further. So I think that's, yes,
for your initiative. I think it's a good one.
Great, guys. Then we'll talk again.
Thanks all.
Cheers,
Thanks all.
guys.
Keep
Keep
well.
well.
Being out with you. Cheers.
Bye.